Have you ever had a moment of clarity so profound that you tried to share it with someone and watched their eyes glaze over? Or worse, seen them look at you like you'd lost your mind? Here's the thing. The deepest truths you'll ever experience can't be explained. They can only be lived. And the moment you try to put them into words, something essential gets lost in translation. There's a reason the wisest people throughout history have spoken the least about what they truly know. Not because they're gatekeeping, but because some realizations are so intimate, so personal, that sharing them actually dilutes their power. Let me tell you what nobody talks about in the self-improvement space. There's a stage of understanding that comes after all the books, after all the techniques, after all the spiritual practices. A moment where everything just clicks, where you see through the illusion, where you experience a kind of presence that changes everything. But here's where it gets interesting. The people who reach this place, they stop talking about it. Not because they want to be mysterious, not because they think they're better than everyone else, but because they've learned something crucial. Certain truths lose their power the moment you try to explain them. Think about it. When was the last time someone tried to describe a life-changing experience to you and you actually felt what they felt? You can't transfer consciousness through words. You can't download awakening into someone else's brain. It's like trying to explain what water feels like to someone who's never been wet. The words exist, but the reality, that's something else entirely. This matters more now than ever. We live in an age where everyone's sharing everything. Every insight, every realization, every spiritual breakthrough gets posted, tweeted, and turned into content. And in that rush to share, something precious gets lost. The depth, the silence, the actual transformation. What you're about to discover isn't another technique to add to your collection. It's an understanding of why the most powerful spiritual realizations should remain unspoken, why presence matters more than explanation, and why the wisest thing you can do after a profound awakening is simply close your mouth and let your life do the talking. The experience that can't be translated. Imagine trying to describe the color red to someone who's been blind since birth. You could use every word in the dictionary. You could compare it to warmth, to passion, to fire. But would they actually see red? Of course not, because some things can only be experienced directly. Spiritual awakening is exactly like this. When you suddenly realize that you're not your thoughts, that there's a vast awareness behind everything you do, it's not a concept. It's a lived reality. It's like you've been swimming in an ocean your whole life, but only just noticed the water. And here's what happens next. You get excited. You want to share it. You corner your friends and try to explain this incredible shift. You use words like presence, consciousness, oneness, and you watch them nod politely while planning their escape. Why? Because you're asking them to understand something they haven't experienced. You're describing water to someone who's never been wet. And the more you explain, the more it sounds like abstract philosophy instead of the raw, immediate reality you're living. The mystics knew this. They spoke in paradoxes and poetry not to be cryptic, but because direct language fails at the deepest levels. When you try to capture infinity in a sentence, you end up with either confusion or cliché. So the wise ones stopped trying. They simply lived it. Your path is not their path. Here's something that'll surprise you. The exact practice that liberated you might trap someone else. The meditation technique that opened your eyes might close theirs. The book that changed your life might bore them to tears. Why? Because awakening isn't a formula. It's not a recipe where if you follow steps 1 through 10, enlightenment pops out at the end. It's more like a locked door, and everyone's key is different. Some people need stillness, others need movement. Some need to surrender, others need to question everything. But here's what we do. We find our key, and we immediately want to hand it to everyone else. We become evangelistic about our specific path. We say things like, "You have to try this breathing technique," or "This teacher changed everything for me." And what happens? We turn a living discovery into a dead goal. We make someone else chase our experience instead of finding their own. We create striving where there should be seeing, effort where there should be effortlessness. The moment you share your method, you risk turning it into someone else's prison. They'll try to force your key into their lock, and when it doesn't work, they'll think something's wrong with them, when really, they just needed to find their own way in. Seeing through others, but staying silent. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. After you wake up a bit, you start seeing through things. You notice when people are performing instead of being present. You see the masks, the defenses, the stories they tell themselves. You can almost predict how conversations will go because you recognize the patterns, the loops, the unconscious scripts people run. And there's this temptation, this urge to point it out, to say, "Hey, you do realize you're doing this thing, right?" You think you're helping. You think you're offering them a shortcut to awareness. But here's the brutal truth. They're not ready. And you pointing it out doesn't make them ready. It just makes you annoying, or worse, dangerous to their sense of self. People need to discover their own illusions in their own time. Awakening isn't something you can force on someone by explaining their patterns. It's something that emerges naturally when they're ready to see. Your job isn't to be their mirror. It's to be present and let them find their own reflection. When you try to wake someone up before their time, you don't enlighten them, you threaten them. You become the person they avoid at parties, the one who thinks they've figured everything out. And ironically, in trying to share insight, you close the very door you wanted to open for them.
The teaching that needs no words. Here's the paradox that makes all of this make sense. The deepest teaching isn't spoken, it's felt. It's transmitted through presence, not through explanation. Have you ever been around someone who just felt different? Not in a showy way, not in a "look how spiritual I am" way, but in a quiet, settled way. They don't say much, but when they're in the room, something shifts. You feel calmer, more aware, more present yourself. That's the real teaching. Not the words, not the concepts, but the energy of someone who's actually living from that deeper place. It's contagious in the best way, like a tuning fork that reminds you of your own frequency. This is why the most awake people often seem ordinary. They're not performing enlightenment. They're not trying to convince anyone of anything. They're just here, fully here. And that presence does more than 1,000 explanations ever could. So instead of trying to explain what you've seen, you simply become it. You let your life be the message. You show up grounded when others are spinning. You stay calm when others panic. You listen when others preach. And slowly, without saying a word about awakening, you become a reminder that there's another way to be. So here's what it all comes down to. The deepest realizations you'll ever have aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be lived. The most profound shift isn't in what you say, but in how you show up. When you stop trying to convince others of what you've seen and simply embody it, you become something far more powerful than a teacher. You become a living reminder. The truth you should never share? It's not a secret. It's just that some things can only be discovered, never delivered. So let your life speak, let your presence teach, and trust that those who are ready will feel it without you saying a word. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. It tells me you're someone who values depth over noise, presence over performance. Drop a comment and share your experience. Have you ever tried to explain a profound realization and felt it fall flat? Or have you been around someone whose presence taught you more than words ever could? I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more content that goes beneath the surface, exploring philosophy, consciousness, and what it really means to be awake in this world, subscribe, because we're just getting started.